All right, everybody, welcome to I don't even know when this is going to launch. It's either going to be the first episode of 2026 or the last episode of 2025. Regardless, welcome to the Western Rookie Podcast, everybody. And we got a returning guest, Mr. Jaden Bales today. Jaden, good Christmas?
Yeah, awesome Christmas. Honestly, just laid low, hung out, watched some football, watched Stranger Things, like back to normal life type stuff. So it was good Christmas. How about you?
Dude, it sucked. I'll be honest with you.
Oh,
And
no.
here's the reason why. My kids, they got so jacked up for Christmas, but every single Christmas we could not attend because our family has been sick all last week. We're just coming out of this stage of coughs and high fevers. And so we're hoping we can celebrate the New Year's. But dude, I'm not joking. Every one of our Christmases got canceled, dude.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's a bummer. Well,
yeah.
Hopefully you guys are on the mend. And like you said, the New Year's parties will be rocking.
Yeah, I'm hoping too. The kids they're excited. I think this week we're going to have some grandparents come to the house and they're going to bring their gifts and we can have another little gift exchange. So, but as always, the kids, they made out at like bandits, right?
Yeah.
They just got a ton of gifts that they probably didn't deserve. But I guess my wife is really into spoiling the kids for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to look at the amount of money that we spent on gifts and decorations and wrapping paper, like what that total would be. I bet you it would just make me angry, dude.
You're like, dude, that's a sheep hunt. No.
Dude, if it was a sheep hunt money, I would lose my shit.
I don't know, man. Tally it up for 18 years per kid. You never know.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, that would be like my dream hunt. Oh, let me ask you a question. Here's my dream hunt. It would be like a combo tag, right?
Okay.
Like I want to be able to go into the Yukon for some reason, I think it's the Yukon. Like my heart tells me it's the Yukon. It could be Alaska, but I want to float down a river. And some days I want to hunt moose with a bow, like one of those Yukon River hunts. But other days of this trip, I want to go up into the hills a little bit and hunt caribou.
I like that. That's
Do
good
they
combo.
have those types of hunts available anywhere that you know of?
You know, I know in the far north of Canada, like I've seen those kinds of combo hunts. I don't know if the floating is part of it, but I know where you've got mountain caribou, you can totally double those things up.
Yeah,
I'll have to look into this a little bit closer. Yeah,
yeah, but we're talking like what? Give me a realistic price for that. We're talking 20 grand, 30 grand, higher.
Usually they'll do a like a sale thing, like a bundle discount. So, you might save a little bit on the caribou. I don't know, probably 40 grand, something like that.
See,
35.
when you say that, there's no discount. There's no discount on 40 grand, right? Like that to me is just like, it's so far away from what I'm able to do right now. You know what would happen?
What?
There'd be a Dateline episode about me being murdered by my wife because of me spending 40 grand on a combo hunt like that.
That's right.
So
well, maybe between now and then, just keep hitting that Powerball, man. I saw it was up at like what, 1.2 billion.
Somebody won it from Arkansas.
Oh, did they win it? Okay.
Yeah, they won it. One person won $1.8 billion. But here's the crazy part. Their take home was only $800 million. So that means that $1.2 million went to the federal government.
Wow.
Federal and state governments. So
wow. That's
congratulations to the IRS for winning the Powerball, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, but on the other side of that though, that Arkansas dude, he could afford some Yukon hunts now.
Oh, dude, he can do whatever he wants. Let me ask you this question. Based off of your knowledge as a guide and doing what it is that you do, what would be the rarest, most expensive hunt in the world to do?
Man, it's the rarest part might be taking somebody to it might be taking somebody to hunt sheep in Russia just because of the difficulty.
Yep.
But the other one that popped into my mind was like, is I think it's Markhor is how you say it. Um, and like the Markhor hunts, I think are pretty insane.
Hmm.
In Pakistan and Tajikistan,
Okay.
those those two things I think would be insane.
I think I've seen a episode where Jim Shockey goes through all of the logistics. Like he's got to take a plane, then a boat, then some like military semi truck up a mountain to a camp that he gets on a horse and then has to ride 10 miles into this base camp and then go another handful of miles to get into the mountains of, like, he's got to have some type of security with him the entire time. So he's not just paying for the tag and the transportation and food to get there, but he also has to pay for a security team that is basically telling the locals to not kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that one too. The other one who's really good about these crazy like dream hunts is Pedro Ampuero.
Okay.
And I really like his stuff, but he did one in Russia. He had to go back twice. So if you have to pay twice, to go back on one of these hunts to get a crazy animal that you're looking for, like obviously that just doubles it, right?
Yeah.
But that one was in Russia and was a sheep hunt. Gosh, it's really good. I'm looking it up right now just because I don't want to leave someone hanging if they want to look this thing up. It's really good though. I also he has a podcast, a hunting podcast in Spanish, and I try to keep up with my my Spanish speaking, so I'll listen to his podcast in Spanish because it's about hunting, and I'm touching up on my knowledge here. It's
Okay.
pretty fun.
So in North America though,
Uh-huh.
is the bighorn sheep the toughest tag to get these days?
Yeah, man. I think it's just the bighorn sheep tags are basically right up there with all these expensive international hunts or
Yeah.
more. I think it was one of the bighorn sheep hunts last year went for like 1.3 million at the sheep show.
Yeah.
Um,
But
so it's
that's
like,
but that's a
yeah,
governor's tag, right? That's a tag that is meant just for auction, just to raise money for the sheep foundation, right?
yeah. The floor on those, when I say like the floor, as in like the entry prices on a sheep tag though, are still, I mean, especially if you want to buy a tag in the lower 48, but like the entry level prices on those are still well over 50, 60 grand. So they're
So
awfully expensive just to get your foot in the door.
so I want to break one of those down real quick, that 50, 60 grand. That is essentially a lifetime of applying for points, and
Yeah.
it's a once in a lifetime hunt, correct?
Well, you could do it multiple times. Those ones
Okay.
that you can buy, you can do it multiple times. Yeah.
Right. But I'm talking about the preference point route where
Oh,
little
yes.
old Dan Johnson from Iowa says, I want to hunt bighorn. I and I've been applying since I was 15 or something like that, right? And so now I have 30 years of preference points. And then how much does the actual tag cost in order to get a bighorn tag in the lower 48?
Man, I was just looking this up the other day. So one thing to just caveat is
Mm,
even if you do the math, if you're starting out today, like if you started 30 years ago, maybe there's still a chance that you can draw a tag like through the sheer power of numbers on your side,
mm,
right? Like you've outlasted people and you've still got another 20 years of trying to apply left. Like you probably could still get one. But for someone who, let's say you're 30 years old today, and you're starting to apply for bighorn sheep, the odds are just simply not in your favor. I mean, unfortunately, like for me, my thought process has always been like I went on a bighorn ewe hunt 3 years ago. And that was because I just was like, man, I know the odds. They're not in my favor. I'm going to try to just go and hunt this species once. And then, I'm dealing with sub 1% odds for the rest of my life. And who knows? Um, the same thing with like moose. I shot a cow moose last year for that same reason. Cause I was like, the odds aren't in my favor to ever
Yeah.
draw. So if you're starting now, like I don't, there's always hope when your name's in the hat, but gosh, the odds are just not in your favor. Um, but the best way you can kind of improve those odds is if you do support something like a Wild Sheep Foundation and go in through their raffles and that kind of thing. Those are oftentimes better odds of drawing than actually going through the state-run systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is crazy because on the bighorn sheep side of things, isn't that a mandatory guided hunt as well? On
Um,
certain
not in the
hunts are
not
mandatory, right?
yeah, not in the lower 48. I can speak to Wyoming because I know it better than any of the
Mhm.
others for sheep. It's like a lot of those a lot of the places where they have more sheep hunting opportunity are in the middle of wilderness. So you either better have a really, you either have a friend with livestock who will take you into the wilderness who lives in Wyoming, or you go guided.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is you're seeing most of the residents. I don't know about most, but a large portion of the residents are going guided even
Mhm.
when they draw a tag in their own state.
Yeah.
Um, Dude, the other thing, so I was just looking up the bighorn sheep cost. The real quick, I was just writing an article for Eastman's about the bison hunt in Wyoming.
Yeah.
That bison license is $6,000. So a non-resident bighorn sheep tag at $3,000 is a deal. you
Yeah.
know, it's $3,002 for a bighorn sheep license and $6,002 for a bison license in Wyoming. So
Is
it's
is
one of the
that
more expensive states.
is that because that bison hunt in Wyoming, those animals are considered still wild?
Yeah, I mean now there are multiple island populations around the West
Mhm.
that still like kind of what you call purebred wild. There was a lot of
Yeah.
bovine mix in with bison as they were reintroducing across the West. So yeah, those Yellowstone herd has been kind of the quote unquote pure herd the longest.
Yeah.
Now like I believe the Henry Mountains bison are also purebred now, and
Mhm.
then like there's other island populations that have popped up. But yeah, that's the OG. That's the OG
Yeah.
hunt.
But isn't that hunt also kind of strange? Because I've talked to a guy who's done that hunt uh several years ago, and he told me, and maybe this is the Jackson, Wyoming, north of Jackson. They have
Yep.
that big wintering ground, and they all come down into there, and it's just like on opening day, there's about 17 trucks that pull out on this road, and they all have trailers and side by sides, and then all these people are kind of talking with each other. They all go out, and it's basically just shooting into a herd of buffalo. The success rates are fairly high because it's such a concentrated area, and everybody gets one, and then everybody goes out and they take apart the animal and then they bring it back. So it's like the hunt part of it is almost like an asterisk.
Yeah. Dude, and honestly, it's gotten a lot less predictable.
Yeah.
So 10, 15 years ago, talking to people who did that hunt, it was pretty reliable that you'd find a bison in an accessible area.
Yeah.
But like I have a friend of mine with the tag right now, and she and her husband have spent something like 20 days this year. And that season goes to the end of January, so they still have an opportunity for some snow to come, but they have
Yeah.
not seen a bison on accessible huntable ground this season. And
Yeah.
they've like every weekend they live in Lander and they go over to Jackson and are digging, trying to dig around and try to find one that slips across the line, and have not found one. And on top of that, like this year, we haven't hardly had any snow in the West. So
Yeah.
we got a good cold shot here recently, and finally it felt a little more like winter. But you got to have good snow to push those bison across, and then you get kind of what you're talking about, where people are there at the National Elk Refuge parking lot and like are coordinating and being like, okay, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go there, and then you go out there and usually like my friend had the tag a few years ago, and I think it was like 2 or 3 other people shot bison out of the same herd he had shot his out of at that same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a completely different concept of hunting when you're talking about specific species that are where tags are maybe. What's the difference? Let me ask you this.
Uh-huh.
Is it harder to get because of the rarity of the species and the um the lack of tags, or is it because of the price point that drives people? You have to, because of, for example, let's talk about the spectrum here.
Uh-huh.
I can buy a whitetail tag in Iowa for, and I know in other states it's cheaper, for $28.50. That's my whitetail tag. Other tags, like you said, for this buffalo is $6,000 just for the tag,
Yeah, just to
right?
go. Yeah.
Just to go, right? So there's this huge span. What makes that tag worth that much money?
I think it's just like the rarity of the opportunity. So,
Yeah.
just pulling up the non-resident draws from last year, there were only 6 non-resident licenses given out, and there were 363 people who put in for it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the scheme of Western like trophy big game, like the really coveted tags, 363 applicants is not that many, and I think that
Yeah.
that is weeded out because, like you said, you got the $6,000 license, and in Wyoming, you got to front that. You have to
Oh
throw
yeah.
down all that money on a credit card or on out of your checking account before you draw, and then they refund you.
Right.
So, yeah, like in the scheme of things, they can charge that much because there's only 6 licenses, but at the end of the day, like that's not a ton of applicants,
Right.
comparatively.
Right. Okay. Um, I want to get to a variety of different topics today as this year ending, year starting podcast. But before we get to the meat and potatoes of today's episode, I just want to send a huge shout out to our 2 partners. If you're looking for a badass broadhead that is made in America, go check out wasparchery.com. They have a complete lineup of mechanical and fixed blades. So if you're a bow hunter and you're hunting antelope, mule deer, whitetails, bear, anything, they have a broadhead perfect for you. So go to wasparchery.com. I do have a 20% off discount code, and that is NFC20. NFC20. Next on the list is Montana Decoy. I know that Christmas is over. Maybe you have some gift cards and you want to spend it on a Montana Decoy, especially if you have a Western hunt in your future and you're playing that mule deer spot and stock game or an antelope spot and stock. They have a variety of different portable, lightweight, highly printed, detailed decoys. Go to montanadecoy.com. All right. 2025. Talk
Yeah.
to me about 2025. Talk to me about the vibe out west. What did you absorb this year about specific species, about just like unload everything that you're thinking about on me?
Okay. The first thing that I feel like in 2025 was folks who are prepared and like have a good skill set and are like know their areas did very well. Like it seemed as though my buddies who are consistent killers did as good or better than normal. And for like on the deer front, gosh, I feel like some of the best bucks I've seen across the West kind of like hit the ground. There were some good deer from Oregon to Montana to Wyoming. And I say that maybe partially biased. I got myself a really nice one in Wyoming. But just kind of looking around, it's like, man, there's some really quality animals in the deer front that hit the ground. There aren't near as many as what people want, right? Like that's a common thread. That's been a common thread for mule deer probably since the 60s. But at the same time, like the quality animals that are out there for people who put in the work was really, really good this year on deer. Um, when you move to the elk side of things, it seemed like there was a lot of hit or miss type responses, especially when it got to later seasons. If you were hunting in Colorado in third season or second season, or you were in Montana for their general season, dude, it was a tough season because there wasn't much for and it wasn't really much for any snow, and that can make things pretty tough. I
Mhm.
say that with the caveat again, though. Like, I went out hunting like at the 1st of October on a good Wyoming general area, and me and my buddy doubled up, killed our bulls in the first 3 days of season, and there were some pretty good quality bulls that were taken. I feel like a lot of places it was like, man, if you could hunt during like the rut or like early enough that the bulls aren't totally split off anyway, people found as good or better quality as I've seen. Meanwhile, if you had to hunt later in the year, gosh, it got tough. Not because the animals weren't there, but just because the conditions were pretty brutal. Um, I guided a family of guys who were on a cow elk hunt in December. Dude, we were butchering and processing in t-shirts in December, and it was just
Yeah.
like, holy crap. Now, luckily, we did still find the elk. They were kind of still doing their normal routine because we'd gotten some cold shots, but for the most part, man, it was late season was tough for elk. Um, just because it's worth mentioning, it sure seems like pronghorn hunting is kind of picking up in some places. I know folks in both in Montana and in Wyoming who had good hunts this year. I went on a good hunt and it was like, man, I don't want to say like the crazy trophy quality is everywhere. Like I didn't necessarily see that, but sure seems like numbers are looking really good. Even in places that were hit by the winter kill almost 3 years ago now. Things are looking up, man. And hopefully we see some more tags given out in places like Wyoming where it's all controlled, because sure looks like we got a lot of animals on the landscape. And hopefully as they get to their maturity, man, should be some stompers coming out this is my prediction. The next
Yeah.
2-3 years in Wyoming should be dang good for antelope. Getting the tag's going to be the hard part.
Okay. All right. I want to go back to mule deer for
Okay.
just a second. All right. Whether it's been articles I've read or like consuming some of the Mule Deer Foundation content or talking to locals or serious mule deer hunters, you've heard about the decline in the mule deer numbers over the course of the last, I don't even know how many years, but that's just what the vibe that I've captured is in states like Wyoming or even in states like Nebraska and South Dakota, where I've hunted in the past. I know guys have talked about it in Colorado and things like that. You said that you know some guys who have went out and found some really good deer. But what about the overall herd health out west for the mule deer? Is it as bad as people are talking?
So one of the things is in human nature,
Yep.
there's two things here. In human nature, we always can only see like what affects us today,
Hmm.
and oftentimes don't look at the big picture, right?
Right.
And what has happened in like the dominated the headlines is like we got this winter kill. Before that, we had a serious drought, and all of
EHD.
this EHD
Yeah.
outbreaks.
Yep.
Usually the EHD stuff kind of in blue tongue just coincides with the drought because the water sources are so concentrated and it's hot.
Right.
Um, but what you end up seeing is like deer populations are cyclical, and pretty much everywhere in the West now we're like on the upswing, right? So you're probably
Okay.
going to see quite a few young animals because we've had some really good reproductive rates in the last like 2-3 years. Um, and so everyone, like the headlines or like the mentality of most folks is usually behind the curve. And they're like, it sucks. I'm not going to go hunting. Whereas, like, if you're looking forward, you can kind of make some predictions about what's
Hmm.
happening because of the fawning rates and like the reproductive rates, doe fawn ratios, that kind of thing. So overall, the decline of mule deer that people talk about, and I'm concerned about it too, is this kind of steady decline from the heyday of the 60s, and it came down a bit in the 70s, and it came back up a bit in the 80s, and then you just kind of see a roller coaster. And again, it's more like the cyclical nature. We had a really and in a lot of places we probably had enough or too many mule deer in like 2015, 2016. dude, that was only 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There's still does who are alive today who remembered there being not enough space for them on the landscape 10 years ago. Like
Yeah.
we're just dealing in a cyclical nature here in the micro, that I think we need to try to wrap our heads around a little bit better to set our
Yeah.
expectations right.
Yeah.
But again, like I think overall, you still got to be looking at habitat and development and other impacts, like where's the predator populations going. Like you got to look at those things in the long term to try to help mule deer in the long term, like this big long downward trend we're talking about. But for a lot of places, man, we're on the upswing. And I know I probably sound more positive than people are expecting on this, but if you look at the fawn and doe ratios over the last handful of years, it's like, okay, cool, we're coming back. I don't know if you hit the same peak that we hit in 2015 or not, but
Yeah.
it is looking better.
Okay. And maybe it's just the area that I hunt in South Dakota. But one thing that not only have we noticed, but it has been broadcast by the the ranchers that they have been increasing cattle production, okay, on the landscape, meaning more head of cattle on the landscape. All right. What kind of impact have you seen in the areas that you hunt? How does cattle affect the wildlife out there? I'm only talking about mule deer because there's only mule deer where I hunt. Out
Yeah.
west, where you're at, there's a whole bunch of different species that are intertwined with cattle. What's the
Yeah.
impact that cattle has on the landscape?
Okay. Do you want to go down like a little historical rabbit hole?
Let's do whatever you want. I'm
Okay.
down for rabbit holes, dude.
So check this out. In the early 1900s, this is really stepping back, right? In the early 1900s, the West was all about cattle production. Like they didn't give two craps about what was happening to the landscape, let alone the wildlife, right? Like this is early days of wildlife management, and they grazed the bejesus out of stuff, like just nuked it. And then, like in the 1930s and 20s, they started really scaling back on that to try to, especially right after the Dust Bowl, they scaled back a lot on cattle production, and we're trying to take care of the landscape a little bit more because they've just been kicked in the teeth with the Dust Bowl and like the ensuing droughts and low production on the landscape. Not long after that, we started seeing a huge boom for like mule deer, right? And historians oftentimes think that that's due in part because the cattle had grazed the grass so low that all that were really thriving on the landscape were brush species, like the species that they didn't naturally select for. Um, so now fast forward to today, we have quite a few places where like grass species are coming back and are being dominant. And there's a world where if someone manages the landscape right and you intensively graze it with cattle, that it actually produces better forage for mule deer. Now, there's a lot of caveats there. And again, it's like a lot longer term of a solution to this situation than I think most people want. So, in the near term, yeah, you probably will have some increased competition for water sources and for space on the landscape, especially with cattle prices being so high.
Yeah.
But if you can get good precipitation, if you can get rain out of the sky and intensive grazing from cattle, it can help mule deer habitat. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that everywhere, right? Like each little microcosm is a little different, whether you're talking about the sagebrush hills in Wyoming or you're talking grass prairies in South Dakota and Nebraska. Like you're going to get some different pockets of how that impacts. But I'm not too worried about it in the long term, especially because like wildlife, the cattle like herd sizes fluctuate a lot with prices and availability. So right now people are building up herds because the prices are really good and there's grass on the landscapes. It'll come down eventually. So
Yeah.
a little bit of that
So
is yeah. Go ahead.
so maybe we're at a point where cattle production is high because prices are high for
Yeah.
profits are high for, if you're raising cattle, and maybe rain had something to do with it. Because one thing that I did notice was there was a lot of water in creek beds that were not there. So that maybe there was more of a distribution of the herd because there was more water available throughout the entire landscape. And even though they were, there was seemed like more cattle, it could have been also a rotational thing. So it's like, I don't know the answer. All I know is what my eyes were telling me.
Yeah.
And because I don't have access to all this private ground, I'm only limited to what I can see on the public that I see, and the grazing that I see, and then like whether there's water in a ditch or something like that. And so I'm guessing that all in some way, shape, or form has a role in what a hunter observes while they're chasing whatever species they're chasing.
Yeah, and having a bunch of cows on the landscape sucks for hunting, just like from an
Yeah.
experience perspective. Like, I totally agree there. Like, I'm not trying to say that hunting around cows is particularly fun or effective.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. So this year I was on the hardest hunt I had this year. It was either my pronghorn hunt or this guided deer hunt I did with a guy, low deer numbers. And we parked at this spot and we're working up this creek bottom. Wind was kind of pulling downhill or across us. And dude, we're just dodging cows. And there's just cow patties. Like, these guys have been just destroying this creek bottom. And we keep working through it. And I'm just kind of like, boy, this looks rough down in here, like just from overgrazing. And then we kind of get high enough on the hillside that it's not near as gentle, and the cows haven't spent as much time in it. And we kind of like get into there's some more brush in this creek bottom that we're walking up, and we pop our head up around this bush, and there's two bucks standing there staring at us. And we're like, oh crap. And it was just like 200, 300 yards behind us. We just were wading through a sea of bovine, and then we pop our head up and there's these two bucks staring at us. One medium one that we elected to pass on, and then another little buck. And I was like, man, these deer, like, they didn't seem to really care that much about these cows in here. Now, I will say I didn't get a chance to ask them. Their English is pretty poor. I don't know if they really cared or not, but it sure seemed like they were living right in pretty close proximity.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now moving on to elk. So we talked a little bit about the perceived decline in the mule deer. You said, don't worry so much about it because it's cyclical, and you feel there's a little bit of an upswing that's happening now or is coming. What about elk out west?
I just asterisk on that. Like, we should be worried about the long-term decline in deer, but if you're looking at your plans for hunting in the next 1 to 3 years, like, it's not, the long-term decline in deer isn't going to be too impacted in the next 1 to 3 years. Like, you're going to see some upswing.
Okay, so before we get into elk, I want you to elaborate on this long-term effect.
Yeah. So that's where, as you look at the next winter kill or the next drought cycle that we go through, you will definitely see it come back down, right? And hopefully, like, the idea is we can take some steps to prevent it from tanking and getting lower and lower and lower, so that these cyclical natures, instead of big, steep highs and then deep, deep lows, we just have more rolling hills. And hopefully we can keep that rolling hills of the mule deer population, like, steady. And that's where conservation, like, comes in to play, and like is long-term effects that'll make a difference.
So conservation is great, right? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Conservation is great. But when you have bad winters followed by major droughts and all these death by 1,000 cuts type of things, that I don't care how good you are at conservation, you can't control the weather, and you can't control Mother Nature. Okay. Don't get me wrong. There's things that you can do to help, but at the same time, it's such a huge thing that is uncontrollable. Are you saying that Mother Nature has dealt a shitty hand in the past handful of generations of the mule deer herd, that every time there's a big swing down, that next swing up isn't rebounding to previous years or previous decades of sustainability?
Yep. That's exactly right.
Okay.
And I come from a farming family, like a farming
Right.
background, and I asked my grandpa every year. I'd ask him like, "How's it looking this year?" And he'd be like, "Ah, it's a little dry." And he'd be like, "How's it looking next year?" "Ah, it's too wet. We can't get we can't get seed in the ground this year. Like
Yep.
it's there's never a perfect year, and I think that people expect there to just be like an average year should be a perfect year, but honestly, you're just always bouncing between the extremes. And ask any farmer
Right.
or rancher, like it's just like you said, because it's an uncontrollable. You just kind of are either taking it by the shorts or you're celebrating the good years.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I think is super cool, or I don't know if it's cool, but it's interesting, is you go back and read like the old expedition notes from uh, the first explorers in like the 1800s, and they would talk about killing antelope, elk, and bison on these hunts, and then bighorn sheep when they were in that type of habitat. Very rarely do they talk about shooting deer on these hunts
Yeah.
when they're getting food. So there is a world where as like I think it's important to have this perspective. Like previous to European expansion, there might not have been near as many deer as we had in the 60s to 80s. Like they're just, or mule deer in particular. Whitetail have had the opposite,
Yeah.
reaction. But um, so as you look at it, it's just good to keep things in perspective. And the best thing that a hunter can do, like I know we're talking more about this history, trends, expectations. Best thing a hunter can do is do good research and try to find places that are doing well because they do exist, and then go out there and hunt hard. And if you don't punch your tag because you're just like looking for a certain age class of buck, like that's great, man. Just go out and have fun and learn a lot, and then come back the next year with a little bit more knowledge, and or 2 or 3 years later, and give her another swing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm more focused on just coming out with the right expectations and hunting hard.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Now going to elk.
Yep. Dude, so elk, I've heard this said before. It's like in 30 years or 50 years or whatever, we're going to look back at the 2000 early 2000s to mid 2000s and say like those were the heyday of elk. Um, Things are going really good for elk across most of the West. There's some places like the Frank Church in Idaho, and some other zones in like Montana where elk numbers are not where people want them. But gosh, you got like new populations being established. You were talking about South Dakota and Nebraska. Like you got elk expanding out there, and just in the last couple of years, they've increased opportunity. You got to have private access and all that stuff. But um, yeah, like non-traditionally places that people don't traditionally think of elk. There's more elk, and they're growing pretty good right now.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
the
will elaborate on one thing here.
Go ahead.
States like Missouri,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. I'm trying to think. I think Michigan,
Yep.
Wisconsin. I don't know if Wisconsin does yet. I don't think Minnesota does. But those states have for their residents elk seasons now. And I
Yep.
think even throughout some of the like maybe even Kentucky has it, or some of the Appalachian states have a elk herd. Yes, private property. Yes, for residents, but still elk.
Yep. The other thing that you see on these elk herds that are expanding, you see this kind of with every wildlife population as they expand, but when something moves into a new place, there's so much feed and so much room to spread out. Um, just the general trend is you see some big critters. Like in a place that is just starting to get elk, if you were to tell me, hey, this county got their first head of elk this or first herd of elk this year, I'd be like, there's probably a giant bull that comes out of there in 10 years,
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where the traditional elk areas, I don't think you're seeing quite the crazy top end, especially when I'm talking about Wyoming, because that's what I have the most
Yeah.
experience with. But like, you're not seeing quite the crazy top end as you do in these places that are non-traditional elk country, and you're like, holy crap, there's some studs that come out of those places. So I'm I'm obviously like an eternal optimist, but gosh, it's a good time to be elk hunter.
Yeah. Is that from a population standpoint, or is that from a tag allocation perspective? Because, and the reason I ask this is states like Colorado And other states, I believe Wyoming I might be able to throw Wyoming in this bucket as well. It's become more difficult to get tags for, and maybe not for residents, but for non-residents, or prices have increased.
Yeah. So that's simply like a demand issue, right?
Mhm.
You look at the West in particular. It's funny you bring this up because I was looking at this stat yesterday. You have 14% of big game hunters live in the Rocky Mountain West or Pacific Coast.
Mhm.
That's
Say that again. What percent?
14% of big game hunters live where the majority of the elk are.
Okay.
And you have 86% of big game hunters who live basically Midwest and East.
Mhm.
So what you end up with, it's more of a demand issue than it necessarily is a population issue.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I've been beating this drum a bunch because I enjoy the hunts myself, but also I think that you can learn a lot about elk hunting by doing cow elk tags and cow elk
Mhm.
hunts. And those tag opportunities, like everyone's so focused on trying to get a big bull that the demand for that is getting higher, prices are going up, and it's getting harder to draw.
Yeah.
But I mean, we saw it in Wyoming. You saw it in this example about Nebraska I was just talking about. You see it in Montana. Like cow elk opportunity is increasing as they are trying to get a handle on some of these growing herds. So for someone who's like, I just want to shoot a big bull, like, yeah, the hunting is going to get tougher to do because it's
Mhm.
going to get kind of ratcheted down like the opportunity is. There's just so much demand. Um, if you want to get out and fill the freezer and come having a good adventure out west, like cow elk hunting is so far on the increase in the last handful of years, and
Yeah.
oftentimes is a reduced price.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I like that. I feel like as a hunting community, and this is just a Dan Johnson opinion,
Okay.
that the effect of antlers,
Yeah.
right? Big antlers has negatively impacted the hunting in, and how do I say this? I think that antlers bring value to the natural resource, right? Because without
Yep.
those giant antlers, then people would not be interested in, like, if a bighorn sheep, right, didn't grow this gigantic curled massive bone and they had little nubs or something like that instead of these big curls, then I don't think that a tag would be going for $1.2 million, right?
Yep.
Same with whitetails, like there it the focus on the community is on these giant antlers, and I think what's happening is it somehow negatively impacts the access for a majority of the hunters, if that
Yep.
makes sense. Okay. And
Yep.
it makes hunting for a certain group of people harder because of the value that we as a community have put on the antlers of an animal. Okay. Take that how you want to take it. I just feel like, I just really feel like that opportunity, though, for the cow hunting or the doe hunting needs to be extremely exploited. And what I mean exploited, I mean in the best possible way,
Yep.
to tell the community, like, hey, dude, we got a ton of does. We got a ton of, um,
Cow elk. Yeah.
cow elk out here. Come have a badass adventure out here. That adventure or freezer needs to be the buzzwords and not words like Pope and Young, Boone and Crockett, like inches and stuff like that. I think if we can get away from that, then it's going to be better for everybody. I don't know
I
why. I don't know why I think that.
Dude, it's because, and here's like the thing that really rubs me the wrong way is people will constantly beat this drum that like hunting is conservation and like
Yeah,
hunting is
it's
conservation. We
not.
got to be able to, if you're out there keeping a population in check with doe hunting or cow elk hunting, like that's the conservation part. That's where you're trying to prevent animals from um, eating themselves out of house and home, or going through people's property and destroying stuff, like in the case of elk. And that's where the hunting, like the rifles on the landscape, help a ton. Um, Everyone loves to go like hunting for these antlers, and it's largely because when we started to cinch down on hunting opportunity because we were killing too many of them, um, we we were only killing males of species for a long time because they didn't reproduce, and it was like these are our surplus, which is still the case with like mule deer, right? Like obviously not very many people are killing does, but there are places where like you've got 120 to 200 doe mule deer on a pivot, and it's like they're causing some serious problems and or can transfer a disease real fast. So it's worthwhile to have some harvest on them. So that's where hunting is conservation, and I think we get lost um, in that aspect of it, and we try to tell a different story than what we're telling, um, than what the reality is. The other piece of it is, though, and I should caveat, hunting is conservation, like where that also does work with the males of the species, is the fact that it raises money for the conservation work that happens on the ground.
Right. I was thinking about this. I launched a maybe I don't know if I've launched it. I haven't launched it yet, but it's going to get launched this week. It's a episode about a guy who goes to Alaska for a caribou hunt, and he talks about it. And in the conversation, one thing that stuck out to me is he was talking about the number of bulls, caribou bulls, that he would see on a given day. Okay. And he's just like, dude, I saw so many bulls, and I saw so many cows too. And it seemed like the sex ratio was way more closer to 1-1 than any other species in North America. Okay. And so my question is, why is that? Are antlered animals, whether that's pronghorn or mule deer or elk, being taken off the landscapes at such a higher rate that our sex ratio is out of whack because of that? Like what should, and maybe this is a conversation for a question for a biologist, but what should the sex ratio be for a herd of elk or a herd of mule deer? Those types of questions.
I think a lot of times, like the original, and I think this still is the case for most of wildlife management across the West. A few years ago, 2019, 2020, I interviewed biologists for like an entire 2 years talking about these exact topics because I was curious. And the resounding thing is we can grow populations with way fewer males. And so let's say you have 10%, just for easy math for the average person. Let's say you have 10% of the population are males. You're still going to have 100% of the females getting pregnant and reproducing every year. So you can grow a population that way. And so therefore the other, if it was supposed to be a 1-to-1 in the nature's, distribution, you've got like 90% of the bucks that are not, they're not adding to the population growth or detracting from it, for that matter.
Yeah.
There's also some studies that have been shown that when you have higher buck or bull ratios, that two things happen. One, quality of antler on the older animals can go down, and you end up with competition on the landscape in a way that can reduce the number of fawns being produced. That's usually only in populations
that because of
high
fighting between males. Like there's so much competition that it actually prevents breeding from taking place?
No, it's just all about food resources.
Okay.
Like it all just depends on, like, if you've got a buck pasture, like you'll see this in Wyoming. You've got a big high country basin. It's maybe 2 miles wide and 2 miles deep. So you got 4 square miles up there in the high country basin. And you've got 30 bucks running in it at one time. They're going to eat down the best vegetation over the course of a summer into early fall. And there's just going to be less prime food. Whereas if you had 15 of them up there, you're probably going to have more food than they need, or 10 of them up there, you're gonna have more food than they need, and they're gonna grow the best antlers and like be healthiest as possible.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
Same thing
That,
for food competition on like winter range when they're down with the does.
yeah. And that's where I've had conversation with whitetails, like a whitetail biologist before, and he was talking about like management, like, oh, we're going to shoot a management buck. Well, from a genetic standpoint, there's no such thing as a management buck,
Right.
right? Oh, I'm going to kill this basket eight pointer. Well, that doesn't matter. It's not going to affect the genetics of your herd. But what it will do is it will remove a whitetail from habitat, meaning that one whitetail will eat zero food if you kill it, right?
Yep.
And that makes all that food available for others, which has the potential to increase antler size because another buck is getting more subsistence throughout the course of a year.
100%.
So he's healthier that way, right? So that would be from the management side of things. So I get what you're talking about there. So is the same thing true then about elk?
Dude, so far, like, there's two things that are interesting. We haven't had like high elk populations like this long enough to have a big body of data, like about like in particular antler size and such. But what you see is like in Wyoming, they're testing some things. I don't know if they would communicate it as a test, but like in these areas I've guided in that have enormously high bull ratios, like 1-to-1 or more, bull to cow. Oftentimes what they'll do is like they're starting more spike hunts and they're starting more raghorn hunts to try to bring that ratio back down. And I will say, like, from having hunted out there in the last 5 years in these kinds of places, like, you don't really see giants. Like, you see a lot of good ones, but you don't see like big top end bulls very common. Which is a misperception because these are managed for a high bull number, and inherently by managing for a high bull number, like you have a better hunt, but the top end doesn't seem to be there anymore.
Yeah.
So I think we're in the middle of figuring that out. Of like, it seems like elk are in the exact same scenario as whitetail and as mule deer, but it's on a bigger landscape scale, and we're trying to figure out how to manage for that.
Right. So here's my question to you as someone who's a guide. What's more important? A larger antler size for a potential client or opportunity at a bull or a buck?
Yeah. Dude, it's funny. I get guys in the same unit with the same max points or whatever, like drawing tags, and each dude has a different perspective of what they want. It is so interesting to me. Like, just depends on how much folks have hunted, how much they haven't, like what they've killed in the past, what they haven't killed in the past. Like, I would have thought when I got into this that everyone would be like giant bull or bust, but even like on these commissioners tags or whatever, like most people are just like, I just want to have a good hunt, like enjoy looking at a lot of critters, and then find the biggest one we can in a few days, and then go home happy, you know. So the more and more that I spend time in this, I'd way rather have a good experience, and then I get the outlier guys who are like, and actually my first guided hunter was the quintessential, like, I want a giant or nothing. And dude couldn't hike to any places where there could be a giant, and he couldn't shoot. We had one in front of him, he missed. You know, it was just like one of those things where like, oh my goodness, this sucks. And then the next guy immediately was like, I want a big one. And I was like, what do you mean by big one? I just dealt with this for the last 4 days or whatever. He goes, well, I brought 3 coolers. Can we get a big bodied one? And I was like, yeah, dude, we got you.
Dude.
You know, like, we got you. Same unit, same exact, you know, everything was the same hunt we were guiding, and it was totally 2 different experiences. So
Yeah.
I will say this though, I would much rather provide a really dang good experience for somebody because I know I can deliver on that, more so than just like the biggest animal of all time, because sometimes they just aren't grown out there, or they just not in the unit, you know.
Right. I feel you. Okay. As we close down on 2025, right now, I mean, shit, it's already too late as far as preparing for specific states or draws. I mean, some of those have already come to an end, certain
Yep.
states. Some are coming up really quickly. When is Wyoming and Montana's application deadline?
Wyoming was, I think their official final date was February 2nd, but make sure you look and,
Yeah.
basically by the end of January, you got to have your apps
Yep.
in Wyoming. And then it's usually around April Fools, April 1st or 2nd for Montana. Same
Yeah.
with Colorado. Um,
Gotcha.
so you have some time, especially on Montana and Colorado to figure out your game plan.
Yeah. So, real quick question. If I was going to send somebody somewhere to do research on what states and application deadlines, what is, as someone who's in it all the time, what
Mhm.
is the best place? What would the highest recommendation that you can give as far as to gather data and dates?
Look, if you like to learn about a state that I'm interested in or like know a lot about, my bias is for the Eastman's information because I
Okay.
write it,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
But here's the brass tacks, dude. I for the last 10 years, I've basically been subscribed to every like magazine or research service or whatever I can find to get my hands on to like kind of compare notes and figure out where I want
Yeah.
to be. So I would definitely say like the more resources you can get gathered together, the better. Like obviously I use GoHunt a lot. I use Eastman's a lot. Hunting Fool's great. Epic Outdoors is great. Like I like just as much information as possible so that you can kind of cross reference what you want out of a hunt and what the availability is for putting that
Right.
together.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, as we move into 2026 and we're saying to ourselves whether we have preference points or whether we want to start the
Mm-hmm.
process of expanding our hunting opportunities to different species out west, what are some key things that we need to be thinking about as we start the daydreaming of mule deer or elk or antelope out west?
Dude, this is I don't mean to be too on the nose with this, but maybe I do. I want people to first ask like, are they a good hunter? Like in the style of which they're trying to get a tag, right? Like,
Mhm.
are you a good spot and stock hunter? Are you a good caller for elk? Like, do you have the skill set to make good on when you do draw?
Yeah.
Um, and if that is like, you got to be real honest with yourself. Because, for instance, for me, one of the skill sets I'm really um, not as good at as I want to be is tracking and still hunting in timber. So I'm looking at it like if I was to draw a tag where I got to still hunt and I got to track, dude, I'm not going to be as good as if I draw a place that is really glassable, for instance.
Yeah.
All that's to say, if you're in a position where you need to learn and put some more days in the mountain building your skill set, like find a hunt that you can do that with to start with and try to prioritize that. Um, Maybe it goes back to kind of what we were talking about. It's so easy. People just want to like take the quickest thing that's right in front of their face. I want to kill a bull, so I'm going to go do an over the counter hunt in Colorado. And I'm like, okay, but you've never hunted elk in Colorado before. You're probably gonna get your teeth kicked in and like
Hmm.
gonna go home frustrated. Like,
Right.
go build some skills before you do that. If you want to start with something like that, that's cool by me. But just understand that there's a learning curve to this stuff, no matter how good you plan, and that's
Yeah.
important.
I'm going to elaborate on that just a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. And that is a perfect example of a conversation that I had when me and the guy that I was hunting with out in South Dakota this year ran into another truck with two other guys in it. And there are people out there who, and I am going to be I'm going to be very judgmental right now. And I'm being judgmental to prove a point. We were in the same area as these guys and we saw the truck and instantly we thought, dude, this truck means that there's going to be other guys in here. It means that they're going to be putting pressure on us. And so I went over and I kind of waved at them. They rolled down their window and both of these dudes were fat. And I instantly looked at them and I'm not in the best shape, right? Like I had a bum knee and it was limited for me, but I instantly saw that these guys were not going to be doing what we were going to be doing. Right? They were going to be walking to the first ridge, sitting down, glassing, and then leaving. Right? Even if they saw something, there's no way they were going to be able to get to it. I mean, these guys were in the obese category. And what I mean by that is maybe you're a big dude and you are very mobile. That's awesome. But if you're listening to this, me talk right now, there is, I just want to say, like, a skill set that is needed and that you don't have to have in the whitetail woods, right? You can get out of your truck, you can walk down a path, you can get in a ladder stand, and you can sit there, and maybe a big buck will show up and you can shoot it, right? Out west, especially where I've hunted and the public land experiences that I have had, very rarely is there anything about quickly hopping out of a truck and getting to a spot where there will be good opportunities. You gotta take it to another mile, or and maybe it's not the actual distance, but it's the obstacle of a major terrain feature that you're gonna have to go way down or way up or navigate some kind of obstacle. And you're not gonna be able to do that if you are X weight. I don't know. Like, I just looked at these guys. Like, one dude was so red from high blood pressure. Like, I would just look down and I go,
He's
not a
about to
problem.
pop. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, not a problem for this guy. And so maybe that's me being really judgmental. But what I'm saying and the goal of this podcast is to help people.
Mhm.
You gotta have the right expectations leading into this, and you need to get to a certain stage before you come to, and I'm not talking about just sightseeing. I'm talking about being in the game, because my first elk hunt I ever went to, I was so far away from where I needed to be physically, mentally, and from a preparedness standpoint, that I was wearing the wrong boots. I was in horrible condition. I was not acclimated to the elevation. I had the wrong gear. Like, it it was horrible, but I needed that in order to say, okay, next time I need to train different. I need to eat different. I need to pack different. I need to be prepared in these different ways. And that helped me. So if I'm going to tell you, this is, with all due respect, don't be fat. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how else to say it.
It's so here, like, I have the exact same perspective, and it goes like, look, I don't actually mind when I run into people out there who are non-threats like that,
Yeah.
because I just know that they're not going to screw up my hunt.
Mhm.
If you're someone who goes out west, and this is basically what I was talking about when I'm talking about getting a tag.
Mhm.
I think it's super important to go out and get a hunt under your belt before you like blow a bunch of points or do whatever, on a fancy tag, because you'll quickly realize whether you are the non-threat or not,
Right.
know?
Right.
And I'm like, just go get your butt kicked, and then you'll be really like have in for a rude awakening.
Mhm.
And whether it's I helped a guy in 2022 on a hunt who went out. It was his first Western hunt. It was an elk hunt in a really good unit. And he went home and he totally upended his whole lifestyle. He
Mhm.
just I think he said he was down like 60 or 70 pounds now and has kept it off for like 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
Because he's like, dude, that one Western hunt woke me up and realized like when you're just living in your standard lifestyle, you might not realize how out of shape you are, or like how unhealthy you are. But you get out to a good Western hunt, dude, it'll wake you up real fast.
Dude, I was sitting in Colorado at, where was I at? I'm guessing I was around 11,000, like 10,600 to 11,000.
Okay.
And we're glassing these meadows, and I see this black dot kind of above tree line, just working its way all the way across this giant mountaintop.
Mhm.
And we eventually run into this guy, another bow hunter, however, and I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, how did you get up there? He's like, I started here and went up here and did this and walked this. I'm like, physically, I could not have ever done that. It would have taken me, and this guy looked like he was very mobile and very fluid in that. And I'm just looking at him compared to me, and I was bigger, and he was like really lean, and he was a local, so he was in that environment and higher elevations more than the Iowa Flatlander like myself.
Mhm.
And so that just tells you right there, like, there is, whether you're in elevation or whether you are just even in Nebraska and South Dakota at 3,000 feet and you're just having to navigate terrain, even if you're really good, like good shape if you work in a cubicle, let's say,
Mhm.
and you work out every day, there's still a difference of hiking for 8 hours a day versus doing a 30 or 40-minute workout every day.
Yep.
Do the 30 and 40-minute workouts help? Yes, because I've done them. I crushed workouts leading up to one of my Colorado elk hunts. Did it make it easier? Yes, it made it easier compared to the previous years, but I did not like it. It's still 10,000 feet is different, dude. It just hits different, man.
Yeah. It's the difference between just surviving on your hunt and then actually hunting, you know?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
I guess this is coming out at a good time. First of the year, new year, new
Yep.
me type stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
So
exactly.
if you believe in resolutions, then, you know, put down the Twinkies and pick up some weights, I guess. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Just start walking, man.
Exactly. Start
Yeah.
walking. Get your steps in.
Get your steps
Um,
in.
any goals for you for 2026?
Yeah, man. So I haven't shot a deer with my bow. Back it up. I haven't shot a buck with my bow since 23. And so I know it's only 2 years, but I gotta get something down, a nice mule deer down with my bow, this year. So I'm gonna go do some early season hunts. I'll probably bow hunt some late season stuff. That's really exciting for my personal goals. I got to hunt with like one of my best friends, that we're trying to plan. That's getting a dang nice buck with my bow is high on the to do list here. So,
Absolutely.
and honestly,
Absolutely.
like, I have a lot of other goals I want to like of hunts and stuff I want to do with people and learn places I want to learn. But I usually only choose one goal per year because I know that it is going to take a lot of time and effort to achieve it, man. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like the big one for next
Yeah.
fall.
Love it. Love it. 2026 for me is going to be a weird year. I'm on the edge. I'm walking this razor's edge right now of it was a struggle for me in my knee, just even in South Dakota this year, um, walking up and down the hills, right? The uneven terrain. I need a knee replacement.
Oh man.
Okay. And so, depending on if I pull the trigger between now and March, that pretty much is no Western hunting for me this fall. Okay. But that makes 2027 really bright for me. Right. So I think for this 2026, if I don't do, like, it might be a real simple Western hunt where maybe I even do some Western whitetails type
There you go.
things.
Yeah.
But like any big elk hunt is almost off the table, or any big mule deer hunt is going to be off the table for me until I get a knee replacement. And then that's another year of gaining strength and mobility back in that knee before I get back on the horse. So I'm almost going to have to tread water for a year in order to do this, right? But then once I get that done, then my 12 years of elk points for Wyoming, my 12 years of antelope points for Wyoming, my 11 or 12 or 10 years of mule deer points or deer points for Wyoming, it's all going to start to come into play at that point, and then I'm gonna be, putting a lot of miles on to Wyoming over the next. My guess is 5 years.
I like it, man. That goes
Yeah,
back to what we were talking about with the long-term view.
yeah.
It sucks to have a surgery like that, but
Mhm.
also like if you do it and you get her healed up this year, it's like now I'm ready to crush it instead of just hobble through these hunts, man. Good for
Absolutely,
you. Good for you.
absolutely. All right, you put out a lot of really good content. All right, you mentioned you write for Eastman's. Are all of those articles online as well?
Yeah, I do quite a few of their blogs that are like just up, just kind of more news type stuff and covering what's happening around the West. Then like I'll write the member research sections for different states. That's on their website.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then I've got for people who do want deeper information about states and their applications. Got a bunch of webinars I'm doing through my company Hunt West coming up
Yes.
this winter and spring. So that's a great way to just someone to get real. Like talking gonna be talking specific units, specific information in like this little group setting. So that's a great way to get started too.
Okay, I want to expand on that before I let you go,
Okay.
because I feel like these webinars would potentially help a guy who lives on the east side of the country get a better, whether that's a DIY guy or
Mhm.
someone who's going to maybe potentially buy a guide. What is going to be covered in some of these webinars?
Yeah, so the Wyoming webinar, depending on when this comes out, it's on January 6th, and I'll use that as like an example. There's like a decision tree that everyone needs to go through for every state. And in Wyoming, this is always the question: should I burn my points this year? And then I go, can you hunt around grizzly bears? Can you backpack?
Mm,
What size of animal do you want? Are you good with managing private public land? Um, those are like a whole decision tree that we're going to go down. Or like, I'm just starting. What do I do? And I'll give specific examples like, hey, here's some cow tags that are really good hunts. Like you could get started here with a $288 tag in your pocket and go learn something. I could also be like, yo, this, if you're not a backpacker, this is the right general region for you. And
yeah,
if you want the biggest bull, this is the right general region for you. Like those are the types of questions that we sift through and help people figure out where to throw down their application. So,
perfect, perfect. If you don't want to fight a grizzly bear, stay away from this area. Type
yeah,
of
exactly.
those
Exactly.
types of things. Okay, good. By the way, I've been thinking about this. I don't know if I would be able to sleep in a tent in an area where I feel there are grizzly bears even remotely close to me. Like
Yeah.
I don't even think I could enjoy the hunt. I would just be like every time I would hear a crack or I would just be so zoned out. I would need like a military escort with me to feel safe.
Dude, I've been hunting around them for almost 10 years now, and it still is nerve-wracking. I killed a elk in grizzly country last year. I had a buddy coming in with llamas to help pack it out, but I killed it by myself and was butchering by myself. And it's just like every stick snap, every twig break like that I heard, like it was just like snap, and it takes twice
Yeah.
as long. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it definitely adds a different element to the game, that's for sure.
So here is the exact story that someone told me that is the reason why I don't want to go hunt elk in grizzly bear country.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay, we'll end on this.
Okay.
The guy he shows up to this outfitter and this is how it starts off. It starts off by him getting to the outfitter, which is at this lodge, and they're unpacking, and there's like this little buzz. There's like a buzz of conversation between all of the employees there, kind of talking about something. So they say, "What's going on?" Well, the night before, or the afternoon before, uh, a guide or someone working for there went up into the mountains or hills to try to locate elk. Well, his horse came back, but he didn't come back.
Oh man.
Okay. And so then they're like, well, we got to go find this guy because he spent the night. It's been the whole night gone, and then that morning that horse came back. Well, they go out and they find this guy in a tree. He climbed a tree, and he said that a grizzly bear kind of popped out of nowhere. The horse spooked, knocked him off his horse. The horse ran away. He had to climb up a tree, and he said he shot his revolver into this bear. All 6 rounds, or however many rounds are in this revolver. And the bear still kept coming at him, so he climbed this tree. And he said he had to spend the night in the tree.
Oh, my God.
Then he comes back down, and then eventually they're coming to find him. He's walking back to camp. Okay? So this guy lives, right? Scary moment. And so then the next morning, they're on a chain of horses walking up, and he's like, other than our headlamps, the only thing that you could see is the horseshoes kind of clicking on the rocks, and sometimes they would make a spark.
Uh-huh.
Right? And they said every once in a while he would look into the dead, like the dark timber, and he would see grizzly bear eyes in the reflection of his headlamps.
Mm.
That scares the shit out of me. And I'm 1,000 miles from that. Like, I heard that story, and even me walking into the whitetail woods here in Iowa, I was like, holy shit, a grizzly bear is going to pop out and it's going to kill me right here. Right?
Yeah.
There's no grizzly bears in Iowa, but you know what I'm getting at? It's like, that's an intense story for people who are trying to navigate hunting any type of species in grizzly bear country.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think that it's funny because, the more you do it, whether you have an interaction or not, you just get more comfortable, and getting more comfortable is how you get killed.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, it is one of those things where if anyone does hunt grizzly country, it's like, it's better to have your head on a swivel and be worried about it than to be comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel you. Anyway, that is how we're going to end this last or first episode of 2025 or 26. But Jaden, man, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to hop on as often as you do and share some insight about hunting the West. Remind us one more time where we can find the Hunt West content that you put out.
Yeah, if someone is real into Instagram, it's Hunt West Planning Co. on Instagram. But if you go to huntwestplanning.com, you'll find links to the podcast, the webinars, other services. I've got a weekly email I send out. That's kind of the hub for everything. Mm-hmm. And if you can't find it on there, like if it's just buried somewhere and you're looking for the podcast, or you can't find just shoot me a message and I'll send it to you.
Absolutely. All right, Jaden. Hey, Happy New Year, my friend. Good luck in 2026, and I'm almost positive this will not be the last time we talk. So good vibes to you. Before we end this episode, though, I do have to do some housekeeping. I want to send a shout out to all of the people who have listened to the Western Rookie podcast. Thank you very much. Please do me a huge favor and go to Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you download the Western Rookie podcast, subscribe to it, leave a 5-star review. Also, we are starting the Western Rookie YouTube channel. So if you want to watch this, go to YouTube, type in Western Rookie, and all of this content is going to be on YouTube along with some additional videos. I got a big plate for 2026, and we're going to be expanding the Western Rookie as well. So go check that out. Again, Jaden, thanks for your time, brother.
Hey, thank you. Happy New Year. And I'm wishing the best for you and your knee, man. I want to see you get back out there. So